Good morning, everybody. My name is John Hopkins. I'm the senior pastor at Relentless Church in Norfolk, Virginia, and I'm very excited. This will be our first video about small church worship. You know, I've been in the ministry for 30 years now. I've been a senior pastor, a youth pastor, but I've always been a worship pastor. Along with that, I've served many larger churches, but I've also spent a lot of my ministry in small churches. In fact, right now, I'm involved in a small church plant here in Norfolk, and we look at worship as the very core of what we do, of who we are, and what we're supposed to be. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. I just want to give you some information about if you're a small church pastor or worship pastor. I want to encourage you and give you some how-tos that would help you to move forward in your worship. Now, I believe that worship is more than just the service, the time that we sing and give testimonies or whatever you do in your worship service. I believe it's a lifestyle. But just like prayer, we need to have private prayer, but we also have corporate prayer. We need to have private worship, which is our day-to-day giving God glory. But we also need to have corporate worship, a time when we all come together and sing and shout and glorify God as a people, as a local church or as a group of churches. Regardless, we all must give God worship. And there are things that we can do in our worship that we can't do, in our corporate worship that we can't do in our individual worship. The singing and the music and some of the things that help us to go to the next level, those things we're going to talk about, and that's going to be a big part of what this video series is going to be about. So I just want to let you know that small churches deserve the same exciting experience as large churches. Just because you're a member of a smaller church doesn't mean that you should be slighted in your worship experience. You know, I've gone and visited lots of small churches and have helped with pastors with moving forward in their small churches to develop their worship, to help them to see their worship grow and draw people in. But they deserve the very best, just as though a large church who has a huge budget deserves the very best. So does a small church. What you don't want is to think, well, we're small, so our people don't deserve that kind of experience. Well, I just don't believe that. I don't believe that for a minute. I believe that excellence is excellence, whether it's at a large church or a small church. It might be different for each church, but it is still necessary. So we're going to explore theological reasons for small church worship. We're going to look at spiritual reasons for small church worship. And we're going to look at technology and technological reasons for small church worship. And we'll do this each week. I will be posting probably on Wednesday each week. So you can tune in and check out some of the thoughts, and we will look at equipment. We will look at how-tos and how to have rehearsals and how to develop and recruit musicians. We'll look at all those topics each week as we go on. But today, I just want to spend a moment talking about why we should look for excellence in worship. I sat once at a church when I was in seminary, and I was actually considering applying for this church's worship position. And the pastor was giving a plea for folks, if you know anybody that would like to lead worship, I encourage them to apply. And in that, he said, we don't care about performance. We only care about the heart of worship. And on the surface, I thought, well, that's nice. That makes a lot of sense. But let me tell you, we can't discount performance. We can't discount excellence. I've learned, for example, as a preacher, I want to give the best sermon I can give. And that pastor, I'm sure, wanted to give the best sermon he could get. He wanted to use the best analogies and the best scriptures and whatever to produce the best sermon, to reach people the most effective way possible. Well, I believe that is also true in worship. I'm sure he thought it's more important the spiritual part of my sermon than the performance part of my sermon. And yet I guarantee he worked hard to make sure that when he gave that sermon, it was given with the best possible delivery. He tried to eliminate the stuttering and the ums and the ahs, and he made sure that everything flowed just the way he wanted. Well, we want to do the same thing in our worship. I spent years playing in bands, in clubs and bars and wedding receptions and those sort of things. And we wanted to give our very best when we played. Well, why would I want to give more to the secular world than I want to give to Jesus Christ in his worship? So my goal is when our worship team comes together and performs in a service, and I keep using that word perform, but it's really leading in a service. We want to make sure that we're the best we can be, that our sacrifice of praise is the very best quality we can produce. I want to make sure that those that are visiting are being led and are seeing folks that care about their worship, folks that put intentionality into their worship. There's a great book written by Sally Morgenthaler, came out several years ago, called Worship Evangelism. And I believe that worship, when people come in and they hear great worship and they see people actually involved in great worship, well, they want to know who they're worshiping and who's worthy of that kind of effort and sacrifice. So when we worship, we want to do the very best we can. And I know when you worship, you want to give the very best you can. No matter what, you want to make sure that your worship is absolutely not only heartfelt, the best you can give, but you want to make sure that it's worthy of the sacrifice for God. So that's a lot of what we're going to be about in these videos. We're going to be about being able to put on a great worship experience, something that God would be pleased with. Of course, he'll always be pleased with our worship, but something that the best we can do with what we have, so that we don't slack off or use it as an excuse. Well, we're just small, so we won't worry about it. We have to worry about it. We want to make it the best each and every week that we can make it. So I encourage you to come back each week to see the things that we're going to talk about, things that we're going to show you, things that you can do, even in a small church, with a very limited budget. Because we know that keeping the lights on are very, very important. We don't want to take away from those things or our mission budgets, but we want to make sure that we can do a great job, even on a low budget. So I appreciate you for spending this few minutes with me, and I just want to encourage you each and every day to be blessed and be relentless.